IG pic, no filter. You could get the no filter. I'ma tell her how it is, no filter. Shorty, you the no filter. IG pic, no filter.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Politics Podcast. This is a special one we're doing. I really realize that in the time and place that we are in right now, with so much going on, so much information, so much disinformation, so many different drastic policy changes and U-turns, people are a little overwhelmed. But there's one issue and one topic that I think affects every community, from inner cities to rural America. One of the issues I think is one of the huge dividing points and often a point of major contention between different political parties, between different peoples and their values. It also something that I think, quite frankly, depending on where you grew up and how you grew up or how this issue has affected your life, can drastically shape how you view it. What I'm talking about is gun violence prevention. Some people call it gun control. Just the use of guns and how that has devastated, I think, American society and folks, and affected so many, literally millions of lives just in this country alone. But it is an issue that, unfortunately, and just sadly to say, that it's something that has almost become part of everyday and normal life. You consistently seeing mass shootings, consistently seeing gun violence, like I said, everywhere from inner cities to rural America and everything between. While America is also a country that loves its guns, like their people hunt for self-defense, for sport, and with so many various state laws and municipality laws on how to carry weapons, on what type of weapons you can have, on what kind of licensing and or registration. It's been a very difficult minefield to navigate in order to ultimately, at the end of the day, what we should be doing and focused on is keeping each other safe. We are a Second Amendment country. The right to bear arms, even if you really dive into that amendment, there's I think it might be slightly misrepresented in our current culture. But when thinking about this, and especially in light of the tragic lives that were lost just a few days ago at the NFL headquarters, and another just most recent mass shooting, along with so many other things and headlines you see from around the country. There was one gentleman, one friend of mine who I definitely wanted to talk to about this. And we were supposed to have a conversation and record this a little earlier. And then these various events that have happened made this conversation even more timely. So with that said, I want to welcome to the stage. I want to welcome to this. Well, am I saying welcome to the stage, or welcome to the pod? A friend of mine, a former colleague of mine, Mr. Greg. Well, before I bring him on, let me make sure I read it down. Read down his accolades and his work. Greg Jackson, who is now currently and was just recently named the president of the Rocket Foundation. He's the advisor to the Community Justice Action Fund and a partner for Safer Futures consulting firm. And prior to that role, where we interacted, Gregory Jackson served as the Deputy Director of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention and Special Assistant to President Joe Biden. So with that, I would like to welcome my good friend. People often say that, but for real, this is my friend. This is the homie. Greg Jackson, man. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
What's going on, man? Good to see you. Good to see you again, Cam.
Good, man. You've done so much, and I know this is an issue and a topic that I wish wasn't political. I really wish gun violence prevention and so many of these things were that wrap around this issue were a little more straightforward, and we just were on the side of making sure people were safe. I'll be the first to admit, to start the conversation, I've definitely shot guns before. I've owned a gun before. I've shot them safely at a gun range, gone hunting, not recklessly using them. I took a class, but I think it is just quite out of control. But this is an issue that I know I've heard your story many times, and if you would share it, but we interacted, and we've known each other for years, but we had the opportunity to both serve in the most recent, in the past administration, in the Biden Harris White House, and you were part of, like, this is an issue that was deeply personal to the president and to everything in the administration, where they set up for the first time ever the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So I want to start there. You were the deputy director, like, for something like that to rise to national prominence and realize this is an issue and a complex issue that we needed to tackle, and to create an entire office, a new office to tackle that, and given both your activism and your personal connection to gun violence, what did it feel like to be able to, I guess, work in that every day, and have the honor to be a part of something like that? And tell me, and tell, I would say, the audience just a little bit more about what that office did.
Yeah. I mean, serving in the White House as part of the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention was, it was surreal. This is an issue that, unless there's a terrible mass tragedy, you typically don't hear a lot about. And, politically, this has been an issue that's been overlooked for centuries. And gun violence has been plaguing our communities in such aggressive ways for so long. I mean, right now it's the number one cause of death for youth in America, but it's been the number one cause of death for Black youth since 2006, right? And so this is something that has been this really intense dark cloud over our communities, but for it to finally be prioritized in a real way, to have a team put in place, to have resources invested, to have policies to implement, was life-changing. And our first meeting of the morning, every day at 9, 10 a.m. was in the West Wing. And I just never in my world would have imagined, like, that's where I kick my day off every day, is sitting in the West Wing and discussing what challenges we're facing, what opportunities we see, and how can we better help and support people. And, I don't know, I'm just extremely proud to have that experience, but I'm most proud of, like, the progress we made. I mean, we executed 54 executive actions. We passed the first law in 30 years. We moved $42 billion into violence prevention efforts. And ultimately, we reduced homicides by 31%. And so that's what I'm most proud of, is that time spent wasn't wasted. It wasn't symbolic. It wasn't a press moment. It wasn't about just taking pictures and being in the space, but it really turned into saving lives. And there's a lot of folks out there that I think are on this earth because of the work that we did.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think you skimmed over some numbers that are quite large, and that really, I think, impacted, when you say over $40+ billion that were going into gun violence prevention, community, I would say different community services and programs, and I think one thing that, in the way that connects, I would say, definitely to our platform, you were instrumental in bringing together a lot of influencers, especially a lot of hip hop icons, and hip hop legends, and I think there were even a couple of athletes. You had Havoc from Mobb Deep. You had Styles P of the Locks, Smoke DZA, Block, a CEO of Block Entertainment. If you know Young Jock and all that he did with his label. I think Peter Rosenberg from Hot 97. To be able to work with the Community Life Fund and so many different folks that you were able to bring. There were some NFL players and athletes and stuff that you were able to bring to the White House, not just for a picture, not just for something, but to get these folks who also cared, who were so integral to both the hip hop community, but also pop culture, but who cared about gun violence and gun violence prevention, to be able to brief them directly on some of the community opportunities and where this money could be accessed, so we can not just stay up at this amorphous, because I think a lot of times when they hear us do these press releases, like, oh, there's all this money that went out, but the average person on the street, or a person who has a nonprofit, or they might be in North Carolina or Ohio, they're like, well, you told me there's all this money, where is it at, and how do we actually turn the money into saving lives? What's up, people? What's up, Hip Politics family? Special announcement: the shirts you've asked for, the hats you've asked for, FDT is all day, every day. They're now available in the Hip Politics store. Make sure you go to hip-politics.com to shop all of our apparel and merch. This is how we fund the movement. This is how we make sure we get dollars in the community. This is how we make sure we continue to bring hip hop's perspective to politics. If you know, you know. The FDT movement is here. We've got tons of colors available on the store. We also got the trucker hats. We reclaiming the red hat, FDT all day, every day, along with the t-shirts available. So make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share, and support the movement. Tap in, FDT. Talk about how it's not just about, oh, we invested this money, but what it actually did in community.
Yeah. I mean, when we break down the resources, it's funny. Well, they used to say like Greg was like the accountant. They even gave me like one of those green visors. I think I have it right here. But because I was always just working through federal budgets and trying to figure out exactly how can we bring more resources to violence prevention. And frankly, like we know that there's a lot of ways to attack it. I mean, when you look at whether it's a mass shooting, a suicide, interpersonal violence, gang violence, at the end of the day, it comes down to a person that's in crisis and has access to a gun. And so we started to first think about how do we get more resources to help people in that moment of crisis so they don't decide to exercise, to shoot somebody, frankly. And so first we started by in strengthening mental health resources. Through the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, we actually pushed America up to the gold standard for mental health resources. We created like 988, for example, that was created through our work. And over 10 million Americans have used that. So we thought about like, how do you create more resources for people who are in that moment of crisis who need help? We also thought about like, look, everyone's not going to call a hotline. Everyone's not going to go into a mental health facility or a therapeutic facility. So how do we get money into the hands of organizations that are already in communities working with folks that are most at risk? And we started by investing in what's called community violence intervention programs. And these are programs that do street outreach. Some of them do like more classroom support. Some of them are more youth focused and have after school programs. And they show up in different forms, but their whole goal is working with the most at risk communities. And so we thought about how do we get more federal resources to them? And frankly, before the Biden administration, there was $0 for those types of strategies. And so we started by investing COVID relief dollars there, $2 billion there, additional $400 million through policies and laws, and then through executive action, making sure that other grants that existed were inclusive of those types of nonprofits, so that whether you're doing a job training program or a mental health therapeutic program, that if a community-based nonprofit is doing the same function, as a Department of Employment Services, that they could be competitive for those grants too. And so the dollars showed up in different ways. I mean, I think a couple examples in Atlanta, Georgia, Grady Hospital is the only trauma center in the city. And so folks who get shot or harmed, that's where they come. So we provided funding to Grady Hospital to put more staff there to work directly with people who are injured, like while they're recovering, having therapeutic support bedside with them, and helping them think through and navigate how they can get back on their feet without, retaliating and causing harm. In Philadelphia, we partnered with a group called Power Corps that was already doing like job training for folks who are coming home from prison after a violent crime. And we said, look, what more resources do you need? So we helped fund them to add a therapeutic staffer on their team and to expand their team to train and support more young men who are coming home to get on the right track. And so we looked at like different organizations that were working with at-risk communities, and maybe they were doing it in different ways, but at the end of the day, strengthening them, we knew could prevent violence. And that's how we attacked getting the dollars down.
What's happened to those programs post Biden Harris? Like, I saw something that I think they shut down the office, or at least they sunsetted a lot of the work. But what's been the update in these first few months of the Trump JD Vance White House?
Yeah, so Trump has been this administration has been devastating. I mean, I laid out like the resources and policies we implemented that yielded a 30% reduction. But Trump's administration has been aggressively trying to reverse that. Day one, they shut down the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. They went through and they started firing key departments of folks. In the CDC, the entire team that focused on firearm injuries were let go. In the Department of Justice, they cleared out the Office of Justice Programs, which is the team that actually sends these dollars out. And then they actually went through and terminated $800 million through the Department of Justice of grants that were already approved. So imagine you receive a grant, it's a multi-year
Start
grant.
building, you start
Hire
planning for
staff.
that, hiring
You
people,
got,
getting the community
yeah, and
programs together, and
you get a termination email. And the termination emails targeted community-based groups, right? So they didn't target law enforcement. They didn't target city leadership. They didn't target governors' offices. They targeted those community-based groups that are working in community to help community. And we know what that looks like. That's directly the groups that are working in Black communities, frankly, in Black and brown communities. And so that was devastating. They also made major cuts to domestic violence programs, human trafficking programs. I mean, they just gutted all the resources for community-based programs to support people either after they've been harmed or prevent violence from happening in the first place. And I was part of a team that the Community Violence Legal Network was created, and we took them to court. And we're, I think, in round 2 of court battles now. We lost our first battle, but the community's fighting back, and they sued Trump and said, "Look, you're gonna have to beat us in court, and we're gonna fight for every dime that the government already committed to us." And so
I
that's been
hate
devastating.
I hate that we have to do that, and it's like
Yeah, to
there's so
save lives.
much in it's around an issue, and everybody they try to politicize and like, oh, you want to take our guns away. It's like, no, I just want to save some lives,
Yeah,
and put some guardrails around this. Like, we don't, I mean, cars kill so many people every day, and accidents and so forth. We've got guardrails around it. Like, the
yeah,
fact that
and
we
this,
don't have guardrails around um, guns and ammunition and age restriction, and the fact that they fought so hard just against background checks and taking
yeah,
them out of it, like former abusers and things of that nature. Like, there's so many common sense things that we could probably do. People who have, like, who consider may be mental health risks and so forth. There's so many different things that we could do that are common sense and don't infringe on people's rights to. Like, if you're a legal law-abiding citizen, you can still go purchase a firearm and use
yeah,
it and own it safely. But I know this issue, and like, you didn't just get plucked into this office and some of the
yeah,
roles, and like I said, and you've been building credibility in this space, but it's an issue that is, I know, personally affected you, and I think one of the I didn't meet you in this context, but I learned about the work you did pretty early on years ago when I met you, and you were speaking about how you had been shot in your gun violence. I mean, and your personal story related to gun violence. I don't know if it's too much, but I would love for you to just share, like, how this work, how you turned kind of tragedy into triumph
yeah.
there.
Yeah, if it's okay, before we go there, I want to just like be very specific about the regulations we push forward, because I think people
Yeah,
just don't know what we did in the Biden administration. So I'll
lay
just
them
give
out, man. Lay them out.
like 3 examples. So one is we made gun trafficking a federal offense. So people may not know this, but prior to the Biden administration, if you illegally trafficked a firearm, you only got a fine, right? And it was like, what? And we found a person who had trafficked 100,000 guns and never received a federal offense for it. And so guns were just flowing everywhere. And we made that a federal offense. We prosecuted over 400 individuals. And frankly, these are people who are literally making money off of pushing illegal guns into the hands of kids, or folks who mean to cause harm, or gang members, or, like folks who mean to cause harm. The second thing is we rolled out a zero tolerance policy for gun stores and gun dealers, that if you violate the law, you will be shut down. Zero tolerance. And we actually shut down over 240 gun stores because they violated the law. And that's huge, because we think about how guns illegally, again, work around the system and get into the hands of those who cause harm. We got to hold them up to a standard. And that wasn't happening before the Biden administration. And that one's crazy, because we shut down more gun stores in 1 year than they did in 20 years prior to that. But Trump, first few months in office, he sent out an application, an email to them, and invited all of them to apply for their license again so they could be reopened, right? And he ended the zero tolerance policy. So, like, he's rewarding gun stores that literally violate the law. It's crazy. Another major thing we did is look, if you're under 21 and you want to purchase a firearm before you're approved for your background check, we now will check your mental health records and we'll check your juvenile criminal history. And if there's any flags there, then you will be denied. And we know that some of the most terrible mass shootings across this country have happened when we have young folks with these weapons of war. And a lot of times they have a long history of mental health issues or violent actions in their younger years. And we're not saying that we're going to penalize and imprison them or judge them for it, but we shouldn't just sell them a firearm, and so those are like three major changes that we made, and it's not, what we're doing is not infringing on people's individual rights. What we were doing was holding the industry accountable, because for years we have been cracking down on folks with illegal guns, but we've never cracked down on how the guns got there and who actually is profiting off of this illegal industry in this black market. And so for the first time, we started to shut that down. We shut down the biggest ghost gun manufacturer. We shut down 350 websites that were selling Glock switches, right? Like, we started to really just crack down on those folks who were profiting. And I think that drastically reduced the number of illegal guns in our communities. So anyway, I just wanted to be very specific about it.
No, we need that because we need to understand not just what you did and applaud you and the entire team for doing that before, but it's also, you've got to create that contrast of hey, now by reversing that, now we've got these type of gun stores back open or opening back up. So people who are already willing to break the law and traffic illegal guns are now able to freely do that. The zero tolerance gone. So now, hey, I'm being a lot more lenient on people who literally traffic, like you said, hundreds of thousands of illegal guns. And
Donald Trump's son. Sorry to cut you off. This is that bullshit. Donald Trump's son created his own company called Grab a Gun, and he's on the board on the New York Stock Exchange, bragging about it. He's like, this is going to be the Amazon of guns. You can literally, they have a promotion on there where you can shoot now, pay later. It's not only that they're dismantling and rolling back life-saving policies, they are now, as a family, finding ways to profit off of these deregulations and doing it publicly, and it is like, it is.
I don't know. Have you been paying attention? I think they're doing that across the board. Look no further than crypto.
Man,
it feels like the Twilight Zone if it wasn't so real, and if it wasn't we see it every day, and no matter what community you're in, whether you see it on social, you see it in on the news, or you see it, like I said, I was saying earlier, it's something that affects you personally. How did you come? I'll tell my quick story, and then it leads into your story. Obviously, I grew up in the Midwest, but I've lived in DC now for over almost 20 years. But grew up in Cleveland and Chicago, and never really dealt with guns when I was younger. You hear about it. You might know some people. I'm not gonna get anybody in trouble, but different people might have gotten a hold of some here and there. But it was never a thing that I focused on until in 2018. I had the honor and the privilege to work right after the March for Our Lives, the tragic shooting in Parkland, Florida.
Yeah.
Those students and all those people who lost their lives on that Valentine's Day, the students and teachers, and in the movement that those kids were able to start. The company I worked at, we were able to partner with them and help them turn that energy and all the dollars and all the attention they got from that, bringing 1 million people to DC and hundreds of thousands around the country, and turn that into a real organization. And I still, whenever people say I've worked at the White House, I've worked for sports teams, hip hop, all that, I still think the most impactful and some of the most touching work that I've ever been able to be a part of, or movement able to be a part of, was that summer of 2018 when they went on 100+ city tour around the country. And I rode a bus. Me and our team, we rode the bus as their traveling communications and press secretary and big brother / consultants with these high school, college students and some of their family and parents. to be able to hop in where we were in churches with hundreds of people. We were in warehouse and in some events were 1,000. We were in small group settings with dozens and a few people. I'm talking about from Colorado to Utah to California to Florida to Texas to Chicago, Minnesota. We crisscrossed the country, and these kids saw so much hate but also saw so much love. But they were threatened at every turn by folks who thought they were coming to take away their guns or whatever nefarious forces. And to see the strength of kids who had just gone through this and watched literally some of them, like when you hear the story day in and day out of like having a shelter in place and seeing somebody in the hallway shot, or having a friend that is no longer here and like having to relive that trauma, but being strong enough to connect with other people in other communities that, like, I'm talking about senior citizens down to small kids that they were able to connect with and provide hope for. And then also not just be there as a sympathy tour, awareness tour, to really focus like, hey, while we might not be able to get anything federally done, because this was during, like I said, this was during the first Trump administration. They got over like 30 or 40 different laws passed at local levels, that some of their work and partnering with local organizations to do so, just to see what could happen in the summer. And it culminated in like one of our last events was we shut down the street and protested the NRA, National Rifle Association, down in Northern Virginia. And that was when I say scary proposition, like I'm having to be there and like people fully shotgunned up all around the perimeter. Police were there, but not if all these people who were protesting against what they were protesting were decided to go crazy, we were not ready.
Right.
But to be able in the face of that, and it forever changed me. Just like I said, because I'm sitting here watching what they're going through. I'm watching, like I said, we were in 20 plus states, like 100 plus events in such a short period of time. I often find myself reflecting on the stories and there to where understood how important this work was to people. And for a person like yourself, where you've been affected and you've been shot, and to be able to turn that tragedy into something that strength, triumph, actual change, while I'm sure for a decade now you've had to relive the mental and physical trauma of that. Like how have you been able to navigate your own personal story with gun violence, both that has affected you and how I'm pretty sure all the stories, the hundreds if not thousands of stories and people you've connected with through your work, how have you been able to cope and hold up and really kind of progress and push forward on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was shot, leaving a bachelor party with my cousins, and I was just caught in the crossfire after a club let out, essentially. And the person who shot me, I think he meant to shoot us, but I don't think he knew who I was, and it was so chaotic. But I think the bullet that hit me, it hit two arteries, right? Like I had a 50% chance of dying in surgery. I went through 6 surgeries and 6 months of recovery. And I'm still recovering to this day, in different ways, physically and emotionally. But one thing about violence, when you deal with something that intense, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't go away with time. It's an ever present part of your reality, and it's really a page turner in your book, about how you see life and how you navigate life. And it's something I carry with me every day. I think the beauty of it is that I've been able to turn that pain into power, and frankly, it's been fuel for me to like help change things for others. And unfortunately, I have met hundreds, if not thousands, of survivors at this point, people who have been harmed, who've lost loved ones, and people on the other side of the gun with stories of redemption of how they've caused harm and how they've taken lives. And the trauma is intense across the board. And it is, you kind of relive it each time. But you also realize that like every day that we work, we can prevent other folks from going through what we've gone through. And this doesn't have to be this way. Like this is This is not. It's not normal, right? Like people think it's normal. It's not normal. It's not normal to the communities. No matter how many shootings happen, it's not normal to a family to sit down and have dinner without their loved one. It's not normal for anyone to suffer a violent death at any hands. And so I've just been really committed to like not allowing the media to decide that this type of tragedy and trauma is normal, because I know it's not normal. It's not normal for my family or my community or any survivor I've met, no matter how much money they make, no matter how much drama or what situation they're in. They deserve a chance to live a long life and make healthy decisions. And so it's been tough. It's been tough, but it's also kind of therapeutic to be able to change things and to meet families that survived, and to meet a family that maybe, they lost a loved one, but our work collectively prevented them from retaliating, or meeting a mayor and being like, hey, our city is down 60%, and that's because of the resources you offer. And there's a lot of media right now about like, this mayor's here, this mayor's there, this mayor's here. But if you really look at the trend, every major city is seeing historic reductions. And I think that all connects back to the national work that we were able to do in the White House, and that activists have been pushing for decades.
I have a question about that. I got a question about that. I think it's complex, and I'm happy to see that like the official numbers around like violent crime and gun violence are down. Homicides, gun homicides are down. I'm often also curious because now in this hyper social media, everybody's got a phone camera, or if one story makes it feel national, makes it feel like it's happening in everywhere. And the old adage in TV, if it bleeds, it leads. So like you've got local news, and you've got a whole news complex in a audience that's been trained to want to see violence, or want to see drama, or want to see tragedy, even if they don't admit it. Like that's what they click on more on social and so forth. So sometimes it feels like when you see the numbers and you're like, hey, it's actually down and things are actually working, but social media or the local and national news are consistently like finding the examples, because it hasn't eliminated completely. So they're finding the examples to like elevate, and then it makes us feel like, well, is it really down? Like, talk to me about that, because I think that people don't feel it, even if someone's never actually personally been impacted by gun violence, or hasn't really been shot or been around it, because they still have so much information in their face, or even old stories constantly get re-pushed to the forefront in narrative and things of that nature. So that it feels like it just happened, but there's real progress being made. Like you're seeing it in cities all around the country, from New York to DC to Chicago to parts of California, all over the country. I've seen several reports on this, but I'm curious to like how do we make sure people feel it and understand we're not through the woods yet, but there is progress being made on this. Even in this current administration, there's still progress overall around reducing gun violence.
Yeah, I mean, that feeling of safety is a hard fight. I think we have to remember that violence is big business in this country, right? Like we look at, last year, the gun industry made over $7 billion. Like the gun industry makes more money than Nike does, right? There's over 20,000 gun stores. There's more gun stores in America than there are McDonald's, right? So this is
Hold on, what?
Yes. Yes. People don't know these.
There are more gun stores than McDonald's?
Yes. Maybe not where we from, not in DC or not in Philly, but like when you look at the country and you actually get that assessment of how many licensed dealers there are more than there are McDonald's, more than there are Starbucks, right? And you think about like, oh wow, like just because they're not all branded the same, it's easy to overlook it. But this is big business, man. This is big business, and there are over 400 million guns that are legally purchased in America right now. And so,
Is that a
There,
year or overall, like in
that's
the
total.
ecosystem
That's
total?
total.
So there's over
Yeah, but
400 million legal guns in the country, and we're a country of what, 360, 370, maybe
yeah,
307,
380. Yep.
380, 380
Yeah,
million. So there are more guns in America than there are actual people, and
yeah.
that's
So
the
you have to
legal
think about it.
ones.
Yeah, there's no it's not an accident that most of our movies like the John Wicks and stuff glorify violence, right? There's no accident that so much of our music glorifies violence or is pushed towards that. It's no accident that like when one shooting happens in one community is blasted all over the media. Like a lot of this is fueling a huge industry, and if we think
Yeah.
that that's not true, we're really being naive, And so I think that's one part of it. The other part of it is, man, like fear.
What's up? What's up? What's up, people? What's up, Hip Politics family? Uh, Special announcement: the shirts you've asked for, the hats you've asked for. FDT is all day, every day. They're now available in the Hip Politics store. Make sure you go to hip-politics.com to shop all of our apparel and merch. This is how we fund the movement. This is how we make sure we get dollars in the community. This is how we make sure we continue to bring hip hop's perspective to politics. If you know, you know. The FDT movement is here. We've got tons of colors available on the store. We also have got the trucker hats. We reclaiming the red hat, FDT all day, every day, along with the t-shirts available. So make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share, and support the movement. Tap in, FDT.
Um, you know, we're Americans are afraid of a lot of things right now. We're very concerned, and I think social media is kind of reinforcing a lot of those anxieties, especially coming out of the pandemic. We suffer so much loss and trauma, and we're so divided and so dependent on social media to really tell the stories for us. That fear and kind of breakdown of community and trusted messengers is a real problem. And so I think that's something we got to knock down. But also, like, gun violence numbers are not as debatable as other types of medical numbers. Like, this is someone alive or dead? That is as simple as data can be. And if you just look at what's happening in our country, like Newark, New Jersey only has 8 homicides right now. Newark, man, Newark, you still got poverty, you still have housing, they still listen to rap music, they still got drill, they still got everything, right? But they're at 8, right? You're looking at the state of California is down 31%. I mean, almost every major city and major state is seeing historic reductions, not one or two, but like 30, 40, 50, 100 less. Baltimore has seen a 20% reduction every year for the last 5 years. I mean, it's becoming one of the safest cities in the country, and places that have had these big raps, these big negative raps, have now some of the safest. New York is one of the top 5 safest cities in the world, right? And like, but people don't think about it. You think about New York and the slum, and so the numbers are what they are. I think we need better messengers to talk about it, but we have to
Mhm.
realize that the media doesn't gain from positive stories, and this industry can't sell if there's not that presence of fear. And so we either have to figure out how do we build new industries that can start to like push this because it's profit for them, or we have to find better messengers and be louder about this progress. And that's something I think we're all trying to figure out. But the numbers are very, very clear that this entire crisis is dropping, and it's dropping as a direct result of the policy of the resources. And unfortunately, we're in a time where that's being dismantled. And if that thing books back up, folks should not be surprised, right? It should not be surprised that when you dismantle these laws, when you break down these deregulations, when you reopen these stores, when you bring back these traffickers into communities, that the numbers go up. And unfortunately, it looks like that's the direction we might head.
Man, this is. I'm glad of the progress we're making. It feels like it's so tenuous, like it's so fleeting, like it could any moment. If and with so many gun and everything around the gun industry are tied to some private, but a lot of public companies, so they need to continue to grow. It makes me nervous that like this is not progress that we can like rest on our laurels. And then with all the other factors that can go into violence, whether it be poverty, lack of education, lack of access, or actually too much access, and all these different things that are reversed, like you said, if these numbers start to shoot and creep back up, and how that information gets weaponized when it's like it doesn't tell the context. I think there's a lot that people need to be aware of and understand that like this is both a local and a national federal issue. But unfortunately, you know, I mean, the person we were both rooting for, the vice president that we got to serve with, was not able to. I'm not sure why. We'll talk about that later. But Agent Orange got back in office, and like you said, start dismantling things. So your pivot, which I think was one of the coolest things, because for those who don't know, and I think I mentioned it briefly, one of rap legend, I can call him legend now. He's been in the game 10 plus years. Superstar, one third of the Migos, Quavo, who I know you did a lot of work with in the White House, in your office, with the vice president. I know he was able to do. I think that was down in Atlanta, right? An event there on gun violence prevention. Obviously, when tragically one of the Takeoff, one of the also affectionately known as Rocket, he was my favorite Migo, lost his life to gun violence, and how he shifted and taken that energy and created the Rocket Foundation for the prevention of gun violence. And are you the first executive director?
I'm the first president. Yeah.
First president. I'm sorry. First president, and able to extend that work with such a, like I said, a cultural figure, who's got it's not about just money, but I think about the resources, the awareness. Like, I mean, you were in Variety, bro. Like,
Yeah.
so the fact that somebody like this, who has such a platform, puts so much energy into this, I've seen it from afar, but also seen it up close, like have such a genuine connection. Talk to me about what your role as the president of the Rocket Foundation, your partnership and being able to really work and help and work with Quavo and everybody on that team as you build out what, like I said, this is a relatively new organization over the last couple of years, but already doing some dynamic work I want to talk about in a second. But talk to me about what that was like to be able to find a new place and a new way to really still stay connected to this issue and like really keep pushing it forward.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I met Quavo after the loss of Takeoff, and we really connected because very similar to how Takeoff was taken. That's how I was shot. You know, it was a similar dispute, and you know, my fate was a little bit different from Takeoff, thankfully. But we really connected on how these moments can become so explosive and how lives can be lost so instantly over things that are so small. And so that's with our vision. It's really, you know, Rocket Foundation is not about anti-gun. It's about how do we address gun violence and how do we prevent these violent moments by pouring into solutions that can shift behavior, right? And prevent these really explosive moments. And it's been amazing. Like, he's been so courageous. He came to Capitol Hill, met with members of Congress, met with the vice president. And that's something we've never seen out of any major celebrity, especially in the hip hop space, on this issue. And he's still learning a lot, but he has so many really big ideas on how we can address this crisis, and is willing to just put forward his voice and make sure that, you know, he's turning that trauma and that pain that he faced and pouring that energy and that anger in a lot of ways and that sadness, but pouring it into something constructive and positive. And that's really, really hard to do. I mean, I know I went through it in a smaller scale than he did, but the entire family is doing it, and they are so amazing. Especially Takeoff's mom, like Tree, like she's a huge leader in the foundation as well. And really, what we're trying to do is, we kind of went through a lot of different brainstorming moments, but we landed on really three big things. One is like, how do we shine a light on some of these programs that are community based and how they can help save lives and make sure that the work they're doing is being, you know, respected and appreciated and celebrated. And so we do that through media, through our annual Rocket Summit, through social media, by including them at events with Quavo, but making sure people see like, hey, community can play a real role and save lives. And these are some examples in Atlanta. And then second, we're putting direct resources into the community. We rolled out a round of Spark grants. Just this week, we actually rolled out an emergency trauma fund because unfortunately this last weekend, 49 people were shot in Atlanta. And that's a lot of folks that are dealing with trauma and pain. Luckily, only 5 of them passed away. But the entire community is scrambling to support those who have been shot, to break up, you know, keep any retaliation from firing forward, and making sure those who've been harmed or suffer loss can heal and recover in a healthy way. And so we created this emergency trauma fund to raise dollars and to pay for therapy, to pay for grief counseling, and to make sure during all these funerals and different moments that folks are getting the support they need. And then the
And
last,
does that before you go there, like, because that just popped up, and like I said,
yeah,
that's something that's been talked about in this last week, and this one weekend 49 shootings is ridiculous, and unfortunately, that gets the summertime. There's traditionally higher more gun use and more gun violence that does occur, more homicides that do occur. I guess when people are outside, the heat, a bunch of factors that probably go into it. Less people in school, just all those different things. But you mentioned that you're working, like, he's based, obviously he's an Atlanta legend and artist in that area. Are you at the Rocket Foundation then connecting to other local organizations? So kind of almost being, hey, we have a big platform because of who we're connected to and because of what the foundation is, but we realize there are people on the ground that can do that. So is that what the Trauma Fund is really focused on?
exactly. Yep, exactly. And it's going directly in partnership with the local groups. So like Hope Hustlers, Cure Violence, Offenders Alumni, Curacao Wellness, the whole Grady operation, the Circle of Safety. Like our foundation is completely integrated with the violence prevention work in Atlanta. And we see ourselves as like, a way to amplify their work and really like infrastructure that can help them, when the city can't help or they don't have enough money in their budget. I mean, I was just talking to someone today that's trying to, one of the young men that was killed, his mom wants to relocate and she doesn't have the money to get a whole new apartment after just paying for a funeral, after paying for hospital bills with no insurance. So we're going to help her relocate and just trying to be very close to the ground to make sure that, the specific families harmed, that they can navigate through this the best they can. But doing that through the local community-based groups and making sure they get the credit they deserve for it.
And you mentioned there was one other pillar.
Yeah. Oh, the third pillar. So we're building a coalition. So right now, Quavo knows that like he doesn't want to be the guy in Chicago trying to tell people to put the guns down or that we can prevent violence. But his friends, he has friends in every corner of entertainment, and he has Huncho Day, which is like a big celebrity football game. He was in the Major League Baseball All-Star Weekend celebrity game. Like he has relationships across the country. And so a lot of what we're doing is recruiting people to be champions in their own neighborhoods. And so we were on All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. And that was our big push. Like, Matt, like when you go back to Stockton, like do more. You're already doing a lot, but like as this coalition, Stockton's your turf. You know what I'm saying? Like how do we get more people who already care about this issue, who are already influencers, to really own their own neighborhoods and to be a part of this kind of big team that's organized together to attack this crisis. And so we're pumped, man. We got some really amazing big name folks that are a part of this coalition. And that way, if something happens in Philly, it's not just Quavo fighting for it. Maybe it is like a Beanie Siegel or someone that's like leading the charge to support that community.
Wow, that's impactful, and I think to see that from hip hop, when so much of the stereotype, some true, some earned, some I think most of it exaggerated, that all hip hop music is either violent or glorifying guns and so forth. And we know that is a piece of hip hop currently and historically, but to see a pillar of our community with so much credibility that he has, both as a person, as a man, as a movement, and then also obviously as a musician, to leverage that to get others in entertainment, to really something that just so directly affects and saves lives, I think is super huge. You mentioned, and we mentioned like this emergency trauma fund that was started in response to just what the shootings that happened in just one city. I don't want to go through the numbers of shootings in different cities and so forth, but those aren't always all. Those may be individual shootings that are aggregated, but then we also have, it's, when you look at some of the numbers around this, it's staggering the amount of mass shootings we have, shootings of more 3 or 4 more people. Just recently, we just had somebody in downtown New York walk into the office building and open fire and shoot and kill 4 people at the NFL headquarters. I've been to that building. Like there's like multiple levels of like security to get through just to get there and get up to those offices. It's some big 60, 70 floor skyscraper where their offices are. And it's like, it hits home immediately. This is right before preseason starts and so forth. And the unfortunate part is that like, the statistics show there'll be another one of those probably in the next week and a half. There was another one somewhere else in the country, maybe not as highly publicized, but the mass shootings and the ability for multiple people to be shot or and lose their lives and be injured, and the communities and the damage that it causes both to peoples, to lives, to property, to everything, and shakes up so much. And then it's talk to me about like how do we, in your viewpoint, like how do we even get a handle on that? Like these, like people are dying at 2, 3, 4, 6 at a time. People like these massive shootings or mass shootings where one person is able to cause so much damage.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we have to get these weapons of war out of our neighborhoods, and what's crazy is that while violent incidents are going down in certain communities, the death toll and injury toll is staying consistent because of the types of weapons that are being used. Actually, University of Chicago did a study on their homicides, and they found that nearly a third of their homicides would have been prevented if folks were not using these high military grade weapons or these machine gun conversion devices and different enhancements that can make a gun more powerful and more harmful. Even like Glock switches, huge problem. It turns a handgun into a machine gun. And that's where this upstream accountability is so important. Like, we have to crack down the industry. We have to put regulations around what types of guns are being sold and to who. And we have to be real honest that these guns are designed for mass casualty. They're not designed for self-defense. They're not designed for protecting your home. They're not designed for close quarter, altercations when you're walking down the street. Let's say someone's trying to rob you. They're designed to do exactly what they're doing, going into communities and taking out multiple lives and mass casualties. And we've seen it over and over and over and over and over again. But yet we still have folks that are out there defending assault weapons and defending these big militarized designed weapons. And frankly, most military people you meet will agree that these should not be in our communities. They should not be sitting in somebody's closet. No one should be able to throw it in the back of their trunk and drive across the country and attack an entire corporate building. And in almost every one of these situations, they're only stopped because they either run out of ammo or they take their own life. Typically, security and law enforcement are outgunned too. That's what happened in Buffalo, right? You had an armed security guard, former police officer, who was shot and killed right outside the grocery store, and even law enforcement couldn't quite go in there. And we see it time and time again where law enforcement are being out-armed by civilians. And these are also the type of guns that Donald Trump Jr. is trying to sell online, for $200-$300, right? And it's like, we have to get a handle on these if we actually care about protecting our communities and keeping our families safe. And we have to push back on this warped mentality that guns make our families safer, our homes safer, our communities safer, because every single data point says the exact opposite. More guns do not make us safer. Stronger guns do not make us safer. All they do is create more opportunity to harm more people. And unfortunately, it's happening everywhere. I mean, even in Atlanta, the 49 people shot, the first one was 10 people shot. It was a mass shooting. Might not have got the same coverage, right? But it's happening in every community, not just these school situations or these public spaces, but a lot of the violence is connected back to these mass tragedies and mass harm events.
Man, we got so far to go on this. Man, I could talk to you all day, obviously, but Greg, Mr. Jackson, thank you. Just thank you for dropping some knowledge. Thank you for the work you're doing, for standing in the gap. Like I said, I know you're directly responsible for people's lives being saved, and in the work you've done and are continuing to do, and the support. Let people know where they can learn more about your work, and even at the president of the Rocket Foundation, you still sit on other boards and other work. Like, what do you want? Like, if you could ask people anywhere something that they could personally do to help advance the gun violence prevention. And let's be clear, this is gun violence prevention. This is not gun control per se. This is not, I need to take away all your guns. And so let's first start, it's centering the lives. I always looked at like that as like gun violence prevention. We are trying to prevent violence. It just so happens to be by guns. But we are trying to prevent the violence. We're trying to prevent harm coming to people, trying to prevent lives being lost, trying to prevent property being damaged. We are that violence by use of a firearm. But I think sometimes people just feel a little hopeless, or they just don't have the education on what they could do in their communities, wherever they may be, of like how they could advance something I think we all actually agree on. We want there to be less, if obviously no gun violence. What could people actually do, or maybe a call to action that something somebody could do in their neck of the woods?
Yeah. Well, it is an overwhelming crisis, but there's real tangible things that we can do that everyone can play a role in. If you want to help us reduce homicide, help us strengthen programs that address trauma. Right now, 90% of homicides in the Black community are not connected to gang activity. 70% are not connected to another crime. What we're seeing is this crisis of trauma, someone who's gone through harm and they lash back out, or they lash out for the first time. And so partnering with the local organization, working with a local church, anyone that can help work with those families who have been victimized. If we can disrupt and treat trauma in our communities, we can reduce homicide significantly. If you care about school shootings, 76% of school shootings, the guns come from the home. So we have to better educate parents on safe storage of the firearms that they own, because almost every one of these tragedies, it's the parent's gun that's doing this harm. So educating folks about safe storage, educating yourself about safe storage, not letting your kids go to someone's house if you don't know what their safe storage practices are, right? Like the same way you wouldn't let somebody go over the house if they got a big Rottweiler running around that's not locked up. You should know what they're doing with their guns. Are they stored? Are they locked away? And then I think if we want to do more around suicide and suicide prevention, we have to provide more resources for folks who are in crisis. And we have 988, but we need more resources that are in schools, in communities, that are more accessible for Americans, because we are in a mental health crisis as a country. And folks need to be able to connect with trained professionals and get real resources to help them navigate through that before they pick up a gun. And America has a long ways to go. And that's something that you can support locally or advocate for locally, or you can make sure that you're just checking on your friends and you're being that helping hand. But thinking about, mental health resources and wellness for suicide, safe storage for school shootings, and how do we address that? And then lastly, we've got to think about how do we provide more support for victims and those traumatized to prevent future homicides.
Thank you. Make sure I'll make sure in the comments and in the captions where people can learn more about what the Rocket Foundation is doing. Follow you. Where can they follow you on social?
I'm at the Action Jackson, and Rocket Foundation you can follow at Rocket FDN, and you can follow Quavo at Quavo. But yeah, we're pretty easy to reach, and definitely would love to stay connected.
Well, Greg, thank you, man. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for setting some facts straight. Like I said, don't take this the wrong way. I hope your job doesn't have to exist soon.
Oh, I agree.
This is one of those ways where you're working towards something. You hope to work yourself out of a job, at least this type of job, because that means we've come a long way on actually really stemming the tide of gun violence around the country. But man, I thank you for your courage. Thank you for joining us today, and to everybody who's listening or watching. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Hip Politics Podcast. Remember, you can follow us on all socials at Hip Politics or Hip Politics Podcast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Stitcher, all your favorite podcast networks. Or make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment on YouTube, all those good things. We got a lot coming on. We got our couple new things on at hip-politics.com at our apparel store. You see the vibes. But thank you to our guests again. We've got some really cool other interviews coming up soon. I'm excited to release those, but we had to make sure we tapped in with my brother Greg. So with that, this is another episode of the Hip Politics Podcast, and we are out. Peace.
Peace.
Hip Politics, baby.